You are living in a time where almost everything you touch, hear, or see feels solid. Yet beneath the surface, it is made of smoke. The news flashes across your screen as if it were reality, but tomorrow it will contradict itself. People argue with conviction, yet if you press them deeper, their certainty collapses into fragments of borrowed opinions. Friends smile at you with warmth, yet their smiles dissolve the moment you fail to play your part in the script they secretly expect of you. This is the age of collective delusion, a theater where truth is not discovered, but manufactured. You are taught to believe that clarity is everywhere, but the more you look, the more you realize nothing is what it seems. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly believed something without doubt? When was the last time a truth cut you so deeply it shook you beyond convenience? Or has your life become an endless stream of comfortable lies, lies repeated by the crowd, softened by culture, dressed in the disguise of progress? Here lies the paradox. Never before has humanity had so much access to knowledge, and yet never before have people been so blind. The libraries of the world fit inside the palm of your hand, yet instead of wisdom, you are fed distraction. The truth exists in plain sight, but it hides in a labyrinth of noise, echo chambers where everyone hears only what confirms their illusions. The unsettling question grows. How can an entire society, intelligent enough to send machines to Mars, fail to see the illusions that govern its daily life? How can you, so capable of reasoning, so adept at logic, live under the spell of collective lies without even realizing it? Perhaps it is because you are addicted, not to truth, but to belonging. To speak what is real risks exile. To reveal what others deny risks becoming the outcast. And so, almost unconsciously, you trade the rawness of reality for the safety of illusions. You nod when you disagree. You cheer when you feel nothing. You smile when you are breaking. But deep down, you feel the fracture. A part of you whispers that something is wrong, that people are not awake, that society itself is sleepwalking, hypnotized by screens, by trends, by ideologies sold as salvation. Is it possible that the greatest prison is not the one built of stone, but the one built of shared delusions? That the cage is invisible, made not of iron bars, but of unquestioned stories, unquestioned norms, unquestioned truths? If so, the terrifying possibility arises. You are not as free as you imagine. You are not thinking your own thoughts. You are repeating the hallucination of the crowd, mistaking the mask for the face beneath. And so you arrive at the great question, one that few dare to ask, but all secretly feel. What is the truth? And why is it that nobody seems to see it anymore? This is the riddle that begins your journey. To confront it is to risk everything you have called reality. To ignore it is to remain asleep, drifting in the warm embrace of the collective dream. The path ahead is dangerous, but unavoidable. For once the illusion is suspected, it can never fully hold you again. And this is where the unraveling begins. You sense that something is wrong, but the problem is older and deeper than you imagine. The blindness of the present age is not an accident of technology or a mere side effect of distraction. It is a wound buried in the human psyche, a shadow that thinkers across centuries have tried to name. Carl Jung once warned that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That is the root. The blindness of society is not just a refusal to see facts, it is a refusal to see the self. Because truth is rarely external, it is first and foremost internal. And what is inside you is often unbearable. To confront the truth of your own motives, your envy, your fears, your hunger for validation, that is painful. To admit that your beliefs may not be your own, that your emotions are shaped by conditioning, that your morality is half performance. This requires the courage of tearing away your own skin. Most people cannot do it. They cling to the illusion, not because they are weak, but because they are human. Nietzsche knew this when he said, "Sometimes we need lies to live." He saw that illusions are not simply imposed from above, they are willingly embraced. Humanity prefers comforting myths over unbearable clarity. Entire societies build temples to half-truths because the alternative, raw existence without illusions, feels like staring into an abyss. And yet, this abyss is unavoidable. If you strip away the illusions of society, what remains? Schopenhauer called it the will, a blind, ceaseless striving that drives all life. Sartre called it nausea, the recognition that existence itself is absurd, without inherent meaning. Viktor Frankl, who lived through the nightmare of the camps, called it the existential vacuum, the emptiness that arises when meaning collapses. This vacuum terrifies you. It terrifies everyone. To face it is to admit that the ground beneath your life is not solid. And so, society offers you substitutes. Culture hands you prefabricated meanings, career success, political slogans, consumer pleasures, shallow identities. These are not real truths. They are placeholders, masks designed to keep you from asking questions too large for comfort. But here lies the deeper problem. These illusions are not individual. They are collective. Alone, you might question them, but together, they become reality. When millions repeat the same illusion, it gains the weight of truth. It becomes taboo to challenge it. To doubt it is to risk exile, and so the collective delusion is born, not from force, but from consensus. Psychology confirms this. Consider groupthink, the phenomenon where individuals silence themselves to maintain harmony. Or confirmation bias, the mind's instinct to seek only evidence that supports what it already believes. Or cognitive dissonance, the refusal to confront contradictions in order to preserve stability. Each of these is not an error, but a survival mechanism. Your brain was designed not for truth, but for belonging. Because belonging meant survival. In ancient tribes, to be cast out was death. That memory lingers in your nervous system. Even today, in cities of millions, you feel the fear of rejection as if it were mortal danger. To belong is to live. To question too deeply is to risk invisibility. And so you obey. You echo what others echo. You nod when the crowd nods. This is why collective delusion thrives. It feeds on your biology. It seduces your longing for safety. It exploits your terror of the abyss. But what happens when these illusions multiply? When they grow louder than the whisper of truth itself? When the comfort of belonging outweighs the hunger for reality? You arrive at the present moment. A society with endless information, but no wisdom. Endless talk, but no vision. Endless certainty, but no clarity. The delusion is not a single lie. It is the air itself. It is in the slogans, in the trends, in the unspoken agreements you dare not break. And so, the hidden problem reveals itself. People are not blind because they lack sight. They are blind because they refuse to open their eyes. They are blind because the truth threatens the very fabric of their identity, their belonging, their fragile sense of safety. You live in the age of collective delusion because most people would rather die in the dream than awaken to the abyss. But this avoidance has consequences, consequences you cannot yet see, but which shape your life in silence. And it is to these consequences that we must now turn. If the hidden problem is humanity's preference for illusion, then the unseen consequences are the scars it leaves. On you, on others, on entire civilizations. These are not always obvious. They live in silence, in habits, in the quiet erosion of your soul. At first, the delusion seems harmless. Believing in the crowd's story gives you comfort. Repeating the collective illusion keeps you safe. But over time, this safety turns into suffocation. The more you participate in the performance, the more you forget who you are when the mask comes off. You begin to confuse the role with the self. Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after pretending? The smile you hold too long, the agreement you give when your heart disagrees, the silence you keep when your conscience screams. These are small betrayals, but each betrayal accumulates until one day you look in the mirror and realize you do not know whose life you are living. On a personal level, this is the quiet death of authenticity. Jung warned that what you refuse to bring into consciousness will appear in your life as fate. This means that the truths you deny within yourself do not vanish. They grow stronger in the shadows. The more you repress your real voice, the more distorted it becomes. You see it in bursts of anger, in envy toward others who dare to live honestly, in the gnawing sense that something essential is missing. The collective delusion also shapes society in invisible ways. Think of how culture manufactures consensus. What's considered normal shifts, not because it is true, but because it is repeated. When a falsehood is echoed by millions, it becomes reality. But this reality is fragile, built on denial. The result is a culture of instability, forever terrified of dissent. You can see it in the way people attack those who question too loudly, not because the questions are wrong, but because they threaten the illusion that keeps everyone comfortable. On a deeper psychological level, delusion breeds fragility. When you live inside illusions, your identity is no longer grounded in truth, but appearances. And appearances are brittle. A single challenge, a single contradiction, can make your entire world collapse. This is why so many defend illusions with aggression. They sense, even unconsciously, that beneath their certainty is emptiness. To question the illusion is to pull a thread that could unravel the entire fabric of their being. Cognitive science confirms this. Your brain does not passively record reality. It filters it. It constructs a version of the world that helps you survive, not necessarily one that is true. This construction, when reinforced by culture, becomes a prison. You do not see reality as it is. You see it as it is permitted. And what is permitted is determined by the collective dream. But here lies the most tragic consequence. The longer you live in collective delusion, the more you forget that there was ever an alternative. A fish does not know it swims in water. You do not realize you are breathing in illusion. And so, the possibility of awakening fades, not because it is impossible, but because you no longer remember it exists. Entire civilizations have fallen because of this blindness. History is filled with examples of societies that refused to see the truth until it destroyed them. Empires that denied their corruption. Nations that ignored their decay. Peoples who clung to myths long after reality had shifted. Delusion delays collapse, but it also guarantees it. What is denied does not disappear. It grows in silence, waiting for its moment to erupt. And so, beneath the comfort of illusion, danger builds. The unseen consequence is not simply personal emptiness, but collective fragility. A society built on delusion cannot endure. It can only pretend for a while that its dream is reality. But eventually, truth arrives like a storm, shattering everything that rests on denial. You might not see it coming. It might arrive slowly, in the loneliness of a life lived without authenticity, in the depression that spreads like a quiet epidemic, in the constant sense of being unfulfilled despite abundance. Or it might arrive suddenly, in the collapse of systems, in the unraveling of trust, in the exposure of lies too large to conceal. The cost of delusion is always paid, even if you do not recognize the debt until it is too late. And this cost is not only external, it is internal. For every day you live inside illusions, you drift further from yourself, further from meaning, further from the possibility of becoming who you truly are. And so the urgency grows. If you do not awaken, you will not only lose your truth, you will lose yourself. But awakening is not simple. To break free from the collective dream requires more than suspicion. It requires rebellion. A rebellion not against others, but against the illusions within you. And it is to this rebellion, the dangerous, liberating path of seeing, that we now turn. The first step toward freedom is always suspicion, the sense that something is off. But suspicion alone is not enough. To awaken from collective delusion, you must rebel. Not with violence, not with grand gestures, but with something far more radical. The courage to see clearly when everyone else is looking away. This rebellion is dangerous because it begins with you. It demands that you confront not only the illusions of society, but the illusions you have built within yourself. The lies you tell to survive. The compromises you make to belong. The masks you wear so you can be loved. To break free is to strip away these protections, to stand naked in a world where most are clothed in deception. Jung would call this shadow work, the confrontation with the parts of yourself you would rather deny. Nietzsche would call it becoming who you are, the terrifying responsibility of creating yourself instead of inheriting the script. Sartre would call it authenticity, the refusal to live as an object defined by others, and the decision to embrace your own freedom, however heavy it may be. The rebellion begins quietly. It begins the moment you stop nodding along, the moment you allow yourself to feel the unease rather than silence it, the moment you refuse to echo what you do not believe. Each of these small acts is a fracture in the wall of delusion. Each is a seed of awakening. But this path will not feel glorious at first. It will feel lonely. To refuse illusions is to risk exile from the group. People may look at you with suspicion, even hostility, because your refusal threatens their comfort. They may label you arrogant, strange, or dangerous. In truth, you are simply awake. Yet, to the dreamer, the awake one is the threat. Here lies the paradox of rebellion. You must be willing to lose the belonging of the false world in order to gain the belonging of truth. And while the world may cast you out, you will discover something greater, your own strength. Consider those who dared to rebel against illusions in history. Socrates drank the poison rather than betray his search for truth. Galileo whispered to himself that the earth still moved, even when silenced by the church. Dissidents throughout time risked exile, prison, even death for the courage to say, "The story is not real." Their lives remind you that rebellion is not merely resistance, it is creation. By refusing to echo the false, you create the space for the real. But rebellion is not only an act of defiance, it is also an act of reconstruction. Once you tear away the illusions, you must build something new in their place. This is where many falter. For when the false collapses, the abyss yawns open. And staring into it, you feel the temptation to cling again to comforting lies. This is why rebellion requires more than skepticism. It requires meaning. Viktor Frankl's insight was that even in the worst suffering, meaning could not be destroyed. And it is this search for meaning that becomes your compass in the chaos of awakening. Without it, you drift. With it, you endure. How do you build this meaning? Not by borrowing ready-made answers, but by living questions deeply. Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Try to love the questions themselves. Perhaps you will gradually, without even noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." To break free from delusion is to live in the raw honesty of unanswered questions, to resist the temptation of simple slogans and easy certainties. The rebellion also requires silence, not the silence of suppression, but the silence of seeing. For when the noise of the world quiets, you begin to hear what is real. The rebellion is learning to withdraw from the endless stream of distractions, the flickering screens, the manufactured outrage, and to enter the deeper current of reality, where your own soul waits. In this silence, you begin to remember who you are. You realize that authenticity is not a luxury, but a necessity. That truth is not a possession, but a process. That freedom is not comfort, but responsibility. Yes, this path will cost you. You may lose relationships that depended on your silence. You may lose identities you once clung to. You may even lose the certainty that once gave you false peace. But in losing these, you gain something immeasurable, the ability to see. And once you see, you cannot go back. The illusions may still surround you, but they no longer own you. You begin to live not as a prisoner of the collective dream, but as an agent of reality. You carry within you the seed of freedom that cannot be taken by the crowd. This is the rebellion, not loud, but deep, not violent, but transformative, the refusal to live asleep, the decision to awaken, even if you awaken alone. And yet, there is one step further. Beyond rebellion lies something greater, the ultimate truth, the realization that not only are illusions fragile, but that reality itself holds a depth you could never have imagined. It is to this final revelation, the insight that transforms not just how you see the world, but how you live in it, that we must now turn. Rebellion frees you from illusion, but it does not yet reveal the fullness of reality. To awaken is to stand trembling at the edge of a vast unknown. You tear away the falsehoods, only to discover the truth is not a neat answer waiting to be handed to you. It is a depth, an abyss, a presence that demands everything. The ultimate truth is this: reality was never hiding from you. You were hiding from it. The illusions of society, the roles you played, the borrowed certainties, they were veils protecting you from what has always been there, the rawness of existence itself. And here lies the paradox. Truth is not fragile, but you are. You feared that truth would shatter you, but in fact, it is the illusions that weakened you. Truth does not destroy, it transforms. To face it is not to collapse, but to be remade. This is why Nietzsche spoke of becoming who you are, not who the crowd says you should be, not who your fears allow you to be, but who you are when everything false has been burned away. And this is why Jung insisted that the shadow must be confronted. For only in embracing what you deny can you become whole. The ultimate truth is not simply that society is blind. It is that you have always had the capacity to see. The delusion persists only because you surrender your sight. The moment you reclaim it, you realize that freedom was never given by the crowd and can never be taken by it. But there is more. The deepest realization is not just personal, it is universal. You begin to see that the same abyss you feared is also the source of meaning. Frankl discovered this in the darkest of places. That even when everything is stripped away, you still retain the freedom to choose how you meet reality. And in that choice lies your dignity, your humanity, your truth. You are not a victim of delusion unless you choose to be. You are not a prisoner of illusion unless you cling to the bars. The collective dream may surround you, but it does not define you. What defines you is your willingness to see, to act, to live as though truth matters more than comfort. And when you live this way, something extraordinary happens. The fear that once paralyzed you begins to dissolve. The loneliness that haunted you begins to fade. For truth, once embraced, does not isolate you. It connects you, not to the illusions of the crowd, but to the deeper reality that underlies all things. You begin to notice it in small moments, the stillness of a sunrise, the honesty of your own breath, the beauty of a conversation unmasked by performance. These are not illusions. They are fragments of reality, too simple and too profound to be denied. And so you realize the rebellion was never against society alone. It was against your own blindness. And the awakening is not just about escaping delusion. It is about entering life fully, without the filters, without the lies, without the masks. The ultimate truth is not complicated. It is simple, but it is unbearable to those who cling to illusion. Reality is enough. You do not need the crowd's approval to exist. You do not need endless certainties to feel secure. You do not need illusions to be alive. This realization does not give you easy answers. It gives you something greater, the courage to live without them, to step into the unknown, not as a prisoner of delusion, but as a participant in reality itself. And when you do, the age of collective delusion loses its power. For even if the world remains asleep, you are awake. Even if the crowd repeats its dream, you stand in the silence of truth. And in that silence, you are free. The final, most powerful realization is not that nobody sees the truth. It is that truth is always here, waiting for someone, anyone, to have the courage to see. And now, that someone is you.